We welcome Young Pueblo and Sah D'Simone to Live Talks Los Angeles. They'll discuss the Young Pueblo book, Lighter. Let go of the past, connect with the present, and expand the future. Young Pueblo is the pen name of the writer Diego Perez and means young people. The name is meant to convey that humanity is entering an era of remarkable growth and healing when many will expand their self awareness and release old burdens. His two earlier books are Inward and Clarity and Connection. Sah D'Simone is a yogi, mystic, artist, best-selling author, host of the podcast Spiritually Sassy, and creator of the somatic activated healing SAH method. He's pioneering a heart-based healing movement rooted in science-backed, tried and true techniques in which joy and authenticity illuminate the path to enlightenment. His books include 5-Minute Daily Meditations and Spiritually Sassy, 8 Radical Steps to Activate Your Innate Superpowers. Towards the end, I will post some questions sent in from the audience. Welcome to all watching, and take it from here, Sah.
Well, thank you so much. And hello, my dear. Wow. Congratulations on the book. And of course, I had to wear a matching outfit to go with it. Well done. This is like, knowing you through this journey and, being like aware of your work. This to me feels like the most profound work. Does it feel like that?
Thank you. It does. It does feel like that for me. And yeah, thank you so much for doing this with me today. I feel like it's especially important for the two of us to be having a conversation because we just know each other for so long and we've really shared this journey together. When did we first meet, in like 2015?
I think 16.
16. Yeah. So it's been a few years.
That's right. It's been
Yeah.
5, 7 years. Oh my God, going on 8 years. I can't.
Yeah.
But I remember us, our discipline and our conviction and our faith in the practice and seeing just how much the practice has transformed our lives, and then how your personal practice has not only transformed your own life, but it's transforming the lives of so many people. And this book is, I want to get into the title, Lighter.
Mhm.
What was that like? Tell me a bit about this
Yeah,
behind.
so that title, it really is an ode to like the total path, right? So not just healing, but the path of liberation. And the path of liberation meaning the total extinguishing of craving, which causes suffering. Um, but that path it's a long path. It's a hard path. It's something that's totally possible for all individuals. But um, what I found in myself is that like I walk this path, I take this path of the Buddhist teaching really seriously, but um, enlightenment it's possible but difficult, like I was saying. So what we can get is we can become lighter. Our minds can become lighter. So even if we don't become fully enlightened, we can still attain some form of lighterness. And I think that's something that's really widely available now more than ever before in human history.
I love that, and something that I always reflect back on too. It's that Buddhism is not a religion of blind faith. The faith and the audacity and courage and determination to keep practicing comes from the revelations that you have, that we have, by sitting on a cushion every day, by doing the practice every day, by being in our bodies every day, by remaining present every day, moment to moment, right? Doing your best effort. And that the self-realization that like having these realizations, like being born from the inside out gives us the faith to keep practicing. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I think the way you said it is so well said because it really, that's where the energy comes from to continue this like spiritual adventure that we're on. Because it's hard work to do this deconditioning over and over and over because not only you're coming across all of your old traumas, but you're coming across the totality of your own ignorance, right? This like
Mhm.
sense of like where is this sense of I coming from, right? And we give it so much power and it has so much control over us, but as you dig deeper you end up finding that there isn't anything substantial there, and it scares a lot of people, right? It scares people to be like, oh, if I don't exist, then what's going on? Who am I? What's happening there? Well, what a lot of different meditators and yogis end up finding is that as the density of I diminishes, what's left is love. It's compassion. It's this goodwill for all people. It's compassion towards yourself and others, and that's a beautiful framework to live from as opposed to ego.
Hmm. Look, but I think you started on, you went all the way to chapter nine, you know? You went way over that to chapter nine. Let's backtrack a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, let's do it.
I mean, that was like stunning, and thank you for speaking about, conventional truth versus the absolute truth, what's real versus what's true, you know. But I want to start on something that I love on chapter three, letting go, and something that you've said on Instagram. One of your beautiful quotes. It's like when the pain is, I'm paraphrasing what you said, but when
Hmm.
the pain
Hmm.
is deep, you're gonna have to let go many times, and I find there's such deep resonance with that, because I think on a spiritual path, a lot of people think there's a magical pill, one meditation, one practice, and then you're free, honey.
Yeah.
So it's the pain is deep. You're gonna have to let go many times, and then you say here, when the healing begins, the strong emotions that surface are sometimes triggered by the present, but what you're feeling is actually from the past. That is so, like, so mind blowing, because a lot of people are unaware if it's, remember that saying, if it's hysterical, it's historical. So this speaks to that so deeply.
Mm.
Elaborate on it, please.
I think that's one of the things that becomes clear when you start turning that lens inward and you start really observing yourself, is that the things you've felt in the past, what you've reacted to, it gets accumulated, it gets added up, and over time it becomes this thick, thick conditioning, almost like cement, and we live on top of this thick layer of conditioning, and we think that we're moving through our lives and making our own choices. But when in reality, a lot of our perceptions and a lot of our reactions and a lot of our choices are being determined by how we have felt in the past.
Mm,
And that makes for a mind that is like pretty restricted, and it doesn't have that spaciousness to allow itself to decide, okay, how do I genuinely want to show up right now, as opposed to showing up in a defensive manner. So a lot of this work of letting go that you were mentioning, it really ties back into how can we reconnect with the present moment so that we can just stop repeating the past over and over again.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we've what we find as well through this process, that we have rehearsed, you know this unfreedom, this anti-freedom style of living, this like rigid mindset. We've rehearsed that so much that to rehearse freedom is so difficult. And I want to paraphrase something from the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh. He says something like, we are so comfortable, and I'm paraphrasing this the same way I paraphrase your work, unless I'm reading off of Lighter, then I'll give the exact word. But my mind works in this way. He says something to the degree that we're so comfortable with our own miseries that to do anything different is so foreign, that we rather stay in misery to then seek freedom, complete, utter, profound liberation. And you speak to this in detail in this book. And have you found that in your own life, like freedom felt scary?
Oh, totally. And it also feels hard because a lot of freedom and a lot of healing, it is about repetition, because you don't realize how many times have you reacted in these old ways, right? How many times have you reacted with anger? How many times have you reacted with jealousy? Literally countless times over and over again. And so many of those times were unconscious, like you weren't even aware that you were reacting in these manners. So, like we were mentioning, these things accumulate. So if you want to break from that and live in a new way, you're going to have to try again and again and again. And it's scary because what are you doing? You're literally building a new life. In some ways you're building a new identity, and being able to embrace your own evolution. It's you're really asking yourself to emerge from a space of profound courage if you're really going to do that.
Yeah, it's like we have to. I feel like awakening sometimes, it's like waking up in this house that, like, unfortunately, because we have rehearsed in this very unconscious and this very automatic
Right.
reactionary style, we've built this house, but we weren't present to like choose the wallpaper, where the window goes, where the fridge goes, anything. And then all of a sudden, through this healing process, we're like, hey, this, I don't like this house. I don't like anything about this house. We got to take this house down. And then you realize that it's built on very shaky foundations.
Yeah.
And the process of letting go is accepting that, right? I think yes, it is that. There's something you say here. Letting go is essentially a profound acceptance of the present moment. We have to slowly train ourselves to stop living in the past and set aside the emotional baggage we carry. Can you speak about the emotional baggage too, in reference to like letting go, honey? The past is no, it doesn't have to dictate who you are. You don't have to be your past. You don't have to be constantly rehearsing the old version of yourself. And I think we do that to kind of please others and because it's comfortable for us. Can you speak to this?
Yeah, and I think this is something that I've been trying to write about more, because I think there are obviously a lot of people, millions around the world, who are very interested in healing themselves, but their first idea of healing is often this imaginative healing, right? Where it's like you're thinking about the past, you're sort of, going back to these trauma points in your mind. But what you really need to do if you want to transform your mind and your heart is you need to realize that your healing actually doesn't happen in the past. It has to happen in the present moment. So, what you're trying to do, the thing that you're actually cultivating, is a new relationship to what you feel, as opposed to feeling with this reactive manner where you tense up and you sort of shift into survival mode and this defensiveness. You create space for what you feel, and you allow that whatever fire arises for it to burn itself out, as opposed to you feeding it. And let's say, like, if anger comes up, as opposed to throwing more anger on top of that anger, you sit with the anger, you let it be there, and then in time it'll burn itself away because you're not adding more fuel to it. So it's funny because letting go often, it has that connotation of the past, but letting go really happens in the present moment. And when you're able to develop a much more efficient, peaceful way to relate with what you feel, then the past will automatically untangle itself and it won't be as heavy anymore. You won't carry that baggage as the same way you used to.
So two things come up for me, and you say this, and I love this. Thank you, thank you. First, are you saying that we don't have to remember our past in order for us to heal?
No, I mean, there's memory is fickle. Memory is
Say it out
fickle.
loud, honey, because this is it right here.
Memory is fickle. Memory is also unreliable. It's very unreliable. It's murky. And this is why a lot of the traditions that emerge from the Buddhist teaching, they are centered around the body and they're centered around how you feel. And because, like, memory is just like, you can't build on top of memory. But what is real, like, if you feel jealousy, if you feel anger, those are literal feelings in the body. You can feel them and they're tangible. You can work with them. Whereas something like a memory or an emotion that's only at the intellectual level, it's very murky. You may be able to see it arise and pass away, but being able to come in contact with the body, and it's in the body that these reactions actually begin. Like, a lot of times we think that we're reacting to this particular memory or this particular emotion, but what you're actually reacting to is how it feels at the level of the body, at the level of sensations, at the level of experience. And when you're able to develop a new relationship with what you feel, I mean, that's where freedom begins.
I love that so much because I think a lot of people are kind of stuck in this idea that unless I can remember my trauma, I won't be able to like heal. But it's you realize that like every challenging experience, every stressful experience, every traumatic experience has left you with a emotional residue, and that emotional residue is logged and clocked and it's living in your body, and
Yeah.
every experience in the present moment, it's gonna offer you the opportunity to meet that which is unprocessed. And our feelings
Yeah.
now are gonna say, hey, look at this stuff. And a lot of the problems, this is the last thing I want to say about it. It's like, because you're saying something that's so radical. It's so what the Buddhists say. It's the path is up against the stream, right? Because it's so different from what people believe healing is about. It's so wild, and we do have these memories that have these hardwired feelings associated with them. But if you're healing the emotional baggage of jealousy, of anger, of despair, of revenge that's in your body, the memories that are associated with that stuff, they will on its own, because you're working with emotional baggage in your body, they won't have a charge in your body anymore. They won't light you up with inflammation anymore. They won't set you off on a spiral. They were kind of past, just like any other thought.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that we're aligning so much on this point because I think it's a critical point. It creates a balance, right? Because sometimes like meditation and therapy, they can work together really well, but there are different understandings where I think there are a lot of people now, it seems, especially on social media, are getting hyper fixated on the past. And they're trying to really understand. So, like, if my mom did X, Y, and Z to me, this is why I'm like this today on this Tuesday in October, like, and a lot of times we don't realize that, if you wake up and you don't feel good, that it's probably not necessarily all the time related to like your relationship with your mom and dad. It's probably because either you didn't eat well the day before or you didn't get enough sleep. So sometimes we overcomplicate the situation and we're putting like too much into it and not realizing that it's not that deep, right? It's like it's not like always related to particular trauma that happened in our childhood. And I'm saying that to balance things out. It's obviously important for you to understand yourself. Obviously, what you experienced in childhood was very formative to who you are as an adult and how you act in your relationships. But we can become highly fixated on that. And it becomes this like destiny as opposed to a thing that we can understand so that we can evolve from it, so that we can grow out of it. And I think a lot of that growing, it's possible because you have to reconnect with what you feel. And I think it's just really important to understand that what's happening in the body, and what's happening in the mind, like it needs a good degree of balance for you to actually be able to move forward. Because if you're just like getting hyper attached to the past, then of course you're not going to be able to arrive properly in the present moment.
Hmm. And there's value in talking about your suffering. There's value in being witnessed by your therapist, by your coach, by
Right.
anyone in that wellness, personal development, space. And I think there is, you know, again, it goes back to the word that I keep using, the rehearsal of that story. And when you rehearse that story and you're not addressing the feelings related to the stories will continue to have more power, more power. And that's where therapy and talking about it and meditation, they don't have to exist separately, but you have to realize that if you're doing the therapeutic work of talking about your problems and being witnessed in that space, but you're not coming home to address the feelings that are alive in your body and doing the vipassana work, right? The
Hmm.
somatic work of going to the body, being with every sensation, being with every feeling, every emotion, the stores will continue to have power. And I'm sorry, my darling, but you're not going to be able to connect to the present. You're not going to feel lighter. I'm sorry. It's really hard. Letting go of the past, it has to do with like being with the emotions in the body in the present moment, right?
Absolutely. And I feel like it's good, because like at the same time, like I just said before, like it's really, really important for you to understand yourself, but hopefully that understanding of your past will lead you into moving into the present moment so that you can start examining yourself and seeing like, oh, I actually could benefit from developing more present moment awareness, or I can actually benefit from developing more equanimity, like noticing the qualities that could assist you in supporting your own happiness. But that's what we get in the present moment is like being able to see ourselves clearly and then be like, oh, okay, these are the, really good things that I can work on that take time to develop. And like you said earlier, like it's just not going to happen quickly. If anyone's trying to like sell you a 1 minute fix, don't buy it because it's not going to help.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And something that I also hear you talk about, and I want to just kind of make sure that people who are listening, who are watching this, can understand the practice of being with the feelings, sensations, and emotions in the body. Can you describe what that is exactly in a practical way for when we are triggered? How do we drop the stories and be with the feelings? How do we actually engage in the somatic space of transformation, of liberation?
That's interesting because it brings me, like, your question brings me back to that moment where I had my rock bottom moment. And I realized in that moment, right, I had done years of drug abuse, like years of just like pushing my body to the edge. And I was so unhealthy, so unhappy. And there's one particular night in the summer of 2011, I did, a wide array of drugs, and my body was falling apart. I felt like my heart was going to explode. When I was on the ground trying to will myself back into life, right? Because I felt how my life was slipping. Um, I realized that what got me there was lying to myself. Like, I never wanted to admit that I had a problem, that I didn't feel good. And I was like, shoot, like if I'm here and what got me here was lying to myself, I to go to a better place, I need to start radically telling myself the truth. I need to be radically honest with myself. And to me, like, even before meditating, before I started doing silent 10-day Vipassana courses, um, what I practiced at home was that when tension would arise, and I mean like any sort of heavy emotion, sadness, anxiety, whatever it may be, I would challenge myself to just sit on my bed and feel it, to literally not run away.
Mm,
And it's funny because with a lot of different therapy models and a lot of different meditation models, they are built on you being with yourself. And now they have their own intricacies, right? Like different meditations will ask you to do different things, different therapy models will ask you to do different things, but either way, across the board, for a lot of them that provide big results to people, they're based on you being able to sit with what you feel, being aware of it, and not running away from it. And from that comes a new resiliency. From that comes a new mental spaciousness and a lot of freedom.
mhm, mhm. That's so big. And I really encourage everybody to just, take that chance, like on yourself, on your healing, to when you feel like running away or distracting, numbing, doing all the things that the world
Hmm.
tells us to do, multitask your way into liberation, multitask your way into your healing. Listen to this podcast, watch this book, like do all these things, and like literally it's all the ways for you to run away from your body, run away from your emotional state. Do everything you can to distract yourself. And something that I realized too, it's like I spent a lot of my a big portion of my liberation, of my path to liberation, that I thought I was getting free, but unfortunately I was doing everything I could to distract myself from feeling, distract
Yeah.
myself from being in my body. I would chant, I would pray. Even my meditation practice at that point was very much like, okay, if there's this big sensation in my body, come back to the breath. And to a degree I was building resilience, I was building a strong core. I
Yeah.
think you've been waiting for me to say this for a long time. You've been waiting for this moment. There it is. You have it. You have it.
I love that too
Resilience.
because it's so one of the teachers that I really look up to, he was telling me a story, and he was telling me a story about his friend who went up to a teacher who was even more revered in my tradition. And he was asking this great master, he was like, what do I do? Like, what do I do to make progress? And this guy looks at him and he says, just accept what's there. Like, stop trying to run away from it. Stop trying to add something new. Stop trying to do something. Just accept. And that reminds me of the Buddha. Like, I heard this one story that I always think back to, right? There was a story of the Buddha was about to have a rains retreat, and there were these three philosophers who were going to the rains retreat. A rains retreat lasts about 3 months long. And then there was also this older woman who was like very old in her late 90s, and she wanted to do the course as well. The woman was so frail that someone had to carry her on their back to go to the course. At the end of the 3 months, the woman became fully liberated, and the three philosophers, they had attained nothing. Um, and they went to the old woman and they were like, did the Buddha give you some special instruction? Like, what did he tell you that we didn't get? Can you tell us? And she told them, she was like, he told me to just observe, to just observe. And she was able to do that, and they weren't. They totally overcomplicated the process. They were trying to do too much. And I think about that, just observe. To me, it's synonymous with just accept. Like, just accept what's there. And even if it sucks, even if it hurts, even if it's like so uncomfortable, even if it's dull and boring, to just be there,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much resilience, so much wisdom that comes from that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love this so much. And and to kind of just like, you know, deepen this point that we're making here, it's so important that we develop concentration and develop our ability to observe what's happening in the body without all the added layers. Because when you're speaking positive affirmations, praying, dancing, running, even meditating without the concentration, the ability to observe, you are just spray painting the weeds in the garden of your inner world. And if you take an old poisonous weed and you go to the Home Depot, whatever, and you buy a golden spray paint, it's gonna look cute. You're gonna want to keep it around, unfortunately, because it's gold and it looks nice, but it's still poisonous weed. It's still creating inflammation, it's still creating tension in your body. So, through the process of revelation, of self actualization, and becoming free, would you agree that it requires a tremendous amount of building concentration and the ability to observe without adding new stories?
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think happiness, it requires intentional cultivation, and it doesn't just happen on its own. It's something that's gradual. It's something that we have to cultivate. And when it's funny because when I think about them, so like I'll go on meditation courses a few times a year, and sometimes those courses will be longer, like 30, 45 days. And when I come out of them, I'm like, oh, I was like in the mental gym. I was in the gym. Like the whole time I was developing my ability to be aware of the present moment, to be equanimous with whatever arises. And this equanimity, like it helps clean the mind and allows love to flourish. And you practice that love by giving metta.
Mm,
But it's it's just something that we have to be okay with it taking time. And that's the thing. It's like a lot of these practices, they will give you immediate results. You're like, whoa, what happens? My mind feels lighter. But the greatest results, they come after weeks, months, years of practice. And we have to be okay with that because, like we said before, we've spent this whole amount, like years, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, just reacting incessantly over and over again. So you're not just going to build freedom overnight. It's going to take time.
hmm I love that, and that brings me to something that you say. I'm gonna read this first little paragraph, but it's a story about Angulimala, which I love
Hmm.
that you talked about in this book. I love this so much because I think a lot of people who carry guilt and shame and revenge and just a sense of burden, like there's something about their story that's so burdening to them that they allow that burdening to become the definition of their biography, and they think that healing isn't possible for them because of how heavy that burden is. So I
Yeah.
love that you said this in the book. So I'm going to read this little thing and then please take it away.
Hmm.
You say here, and it's kind of emotional to me. I don't know why. Just it's so beautiful that you wrote this in the book, Diego. Like truly, I'm like, yes. So you say here, who do we become after we have peeled back the layers of greed and fear that have dominated our lives and stood in the way of our happiness? How do we feel and think after we have come to terms with our old pain and start the work of deep healing? Who are we after we're no longer dominated by selfishness? What does a mind feel like when it no longer carries so much burden? And then you lead on to talk about the Angulimala's story, who was a savage killer. Take it away. I just wanted to bring this into the mix as I find a lot of people in recovery who
Hmm.
have had a rough past, who have caused harm, meaning all of us can kind of hit up a wall in the healing process. So I think you putting this here just is like thank you for allowing us all to be human through this process.
Yeah. Thank you so much for highlighting that particular part of the book. No, I haven't gotten a chance to talk about that part of the book yet because um, I just feel like it's so, so important to realize that the people we revere, the people that we look up to, they were not saints every step of the way. They became saints. They were able to say no to causing harm to themselves and other people, and eventually purified their minds enough that they were able to witness a profoundly transforming truth that then allowed them to serve others really beautifully and really well. And the story of this person, Angulimala, right? He was a really savage killer, like killed like 999 people. And when he came across the Buddha, he was going to kill the Buddha too, but the Buddha instead got him to slow down for a moment and taught him how to meditate. This person who was once a killer actually worked, kept meditating, and became fully liberated. And I wanted to highlight that story because we have all done things wrong in the past. We have all done things that we regret, things that have may even caused shame to arise. And just because we've done things like that before that may have been harmful to ourselves or others, it doesn't mean that we're bound to repeat them endlessly. It doesn't mean that you're forevermore a bad person. It means that you're a human being, that we all make these mistakes. And if we can commit to not doing them again, that's really the biggest thing that we can do is like, yeah, I may have caused harm to some people, but trust me, I don't want to harm anyone else anymore. And that's one of the best things that as a human being we can offer to each other. Because if I commit to no longer harming myself or others, that means that if you cross my path now, it's a path that is free of any sort of harm towards you. It's a space where you can exist and pass through without any fear. So it's funny, I think we have this in Theravada. There's this truth of Shila of morality, where when people take this vow of morality that they, essentially won't be harming themselves or others, what you're really creating is a condition for another person to experience fearlessness because they don't have to experience fear around you because they have no motivation to harm you.
Mm.
And yeah, but I think no one just like ends up like that. No one is born like that. People evolve into that, and it's okay for people to change. Yeah.
Is there a quote from like Oscar Wilde? I paraphrase all these great people all the time. I think he said something like, saints, the difference between a saint and a sinner is that I forgot something like a sinner can be a saint, and a saint was a sinner. And I love that you're speaking to this here and giving us all the, the reader to the book and everyone who's watching the reminder that freedom is possible. Doesn't matter how much harm you have rehearsed, how much harm you have caused, it is possible, and it starts with the present moment. Can you speak about
Hmm.
this a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, it makes me even think of another one of the Buddha's chief disciples, Mahamoggallana. He was, such a saintly being, someone who served the Dhamma so well. But in one of his past lives, he was Mara, like the great evil. And like he was like
This man
he
like,
was
oh
you
yeah,
know and
wow.
he would do his best to stop people from becoming enlightened because he loved craving so much and thought everybody should just roll in craving. And so like even someone like that, like it's because one day, they saw that there was a potential for freedom and they started working towards it. They were able to come out of that. And I think it's particularly important to understand that in this time of like cancel culture and all of these things that like it's totally, it's fine. It's always good for you to defend yourself. But even when you defend yourself, it's important to understand that the person who did wrong isn't innately bad, and there's still space for recovery. There's still space for them to evolve into a new person, and that does take intention from their part. It does take them wanting and taking literal steps to becoming a better individual, but
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that like once, if you're lost one day, you'll be lost forever. That's not true at all. Luckily we have like all these healing modalities. And that's something that like I think people really, can contemplate is like we live in a historically unprecedented time. Like we live in a time where I really feel a healing generation is emerging. And I'm talking about everyone who's alive today, right? Whether you're very young or very old, we have access to healing modalities that are truly transformative. Things that come from the Eastern world, things that come from the Western world, things that come from indigenous modalities. There is so much out there that can literally transform your mind and heart so that you may live a freer, happier, more compassionate life.
Mm-hmm.
And you won't find that in other periods in history. So we have to take advantage of that. We have to use that and make sure that it becomes even more accessible so that more people can benefit from these healing modalities. And I think that's the thing that we've always been missing in trying to create an actually peaceful world, is that we didn't know how to heal ourselves, and now we do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And one thing I just want to trace back real quick. So what you're saying, it's also my belief as a Buddhist as well, but I think it's kind of a hard thing for people to really like adopt that view because it's so spacious, it's so wide, it's so not restricted and rigid and small that it is kind of a earth shattering. Everyone is innately good, right? At the base of their being, they are a Buddha. They are, um, benevolent beings. Would you agree?
I think to a certain degree, I mean, I feel like what's really in there, what's in there is conditioning. And if you were to remove all conditioning, nothing would be there. But in that nothingness, a lot of love is able to flow.
That's
Like
right.
when beings are able to like fully encounter the truth of no self, they don't become evil people. They
Mm-hmm.
become beings of boundless, limitless love.
Mm-hmm.
And love is good.
Exactly. So let's jump into
Mhm.
that then. I mean, I do have so many more notes. I'm like, let's talk about intuition because I think a lot of people misguide their conditioning for intuition. But I think let's lead into that. So conventional truth versus ultimate truth, and what I have highlighted here, it's which is it's essentially what you're speaking about here. Um, you say letting go of I will open you up to your real strength, to the finest qualities that the human mind is composed of, what the Buddha called the heavenly abodes or the Brahma Viharas. So let's speak about this. Talk to us about this no self, that we're not who we think we are. And then when we arrive at the deep core, who are we?
Yeah, I love talking about this because I used to stay away from it in the past because I didn't know how people seem to, just love the idea of the soul, the idea of the sense of self and its everlasting quality. But I've been meditating for a number of years now, and what's really evident is the truth of change, is the truth of impermanence. And that being able to literally experience the truth of everything arising and passing away, it opens you up to the reality that our idea of identity is actually way too static. Like we think ourselves of this thing that, and this is who we are, and this is how we feel, and that's how we'll be for the rest of our lives. But really, identity is dynamic. Like we should think of ourselves in terms of dynamic identity, where we can flow, where we can change, where we can evolve, where our interests are not always going to be the same. And especially if you take your own healing into your hands, then your evolution is going to speed up and you're going to experience a lot of transformations even more rapidly. um, Ultimately, when you observe the framework of reality, um, through observing the body, you get to see that there is change happening at every level, at the atomic level, at the physical level, at the mental level, the cosmological level. Everything is just constantly flowing and changing and vibrating. And when you try to take any one part of that and say, oh, which part of that is me, you start realizing that your sense of me is actually totally insubstantial, that there's nothing there that you can actually lean on, and that what's happening is just movement at incredible speeds that creates the illusion of I. And this is talking ultimate level truth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to some people, when they may hear that intellectually, it may make them feel like destabilized or something like that. But when you're able to experience that truth, it's actually really liberating. It's really freeing to understand, like, oh, this thing that all these narratives have been anchored around, it's actually not real. Like this thing that is holding together all these stories, it's not real, and I can more easily let them all go. And being able to balance that ultimate truth with the reality that, okay, yeah, Diego and Sah are not substantially real, but we're having a conversation right now. Yeah, the two of us, we're talking right now, and we're friends, and we've known each other for years, and we'll see each other, hopefully sometime soon, and we'll enjoy laughing and eating together and just like, enjoy our bond. But these two truths can exist at the same time. We are real and we are not real, right? But if we were only to believe that we were real, then that would just make life really hard. When we're able to like add that truth that we're also not real, it just releases so much of the tension that we build around our sense of ego. So being able to walk in line with these two truths, being and not being, I think it's really helpful. It's really powerful.
Hmm. Yeah, we have a really hard time with paradox. We think that our minds are like paradox, no, but our
Yeah.
hearts are like paradox is the gateway to truth.
Hmm.
It's through paradox that the mystics have been talking about what is truth for the longest time. I think so many of the parables, the scriptures, the sutras, and all this material, the truth is implicit because it's paradoxical. You know,
Hmm.
we have to learn to navigate. So I think one sort of symptom of liberation is your ability to navigate these contradictory truths that like we don't exist as we're not as real and as solid and as static as we think we are. Remember, from one side, I am over here in this body that seems separate than yours. Can you elaborate on this just a little bit more? I think people who do have a really hard time understanding that what the no self can mean on the sort of a day-to-day life, and how actually restful when and kind of like a comforting truth it can be when you can dissolve the solidity of who we are. And you started to speak about it too, but I just want to
Yeah.
just give us a little bit more.
And that word that you use right there is exactly what I was thinking was restful, right? When
Mm,
you like there are these moments that when I've been in these longer meditation courses where it becomes really evident that there's nothing there. There's nothing there, and it's okay. And it feels like your whole being can just relax and you're like, "Oh, it's there's nothing there." And this thing that I thought was there was actually causing me so much suffering. Like, and this one sentence would always keep coming up, like, I suffer because I think I exist. And
okay, honey.
yeah, and it would come up repeatedly, and it's like, wow, like it's really that's what's at the core of this tension that I've been rolling in my entire life. It's just giving so much power to this sense of I, and this sense of I, like what is it? It's attachment, it's control, it's wanting to keep particular aspects of life the same. But when you function like that, you're moving against the current of reality. Like reality really functions like a river. It's just flowing forward, flowing forward. And if you fight that flow, it's going to hurt. So when you're able to like let go of your sense of I to flow in with, in line, in harmony with nature, it makes it much easier for you to still attend to the fact that like, yeah, you exist and you have responsibilities and you have goals, but you're able to do them with more ease, right? You're able to do it without as much craving. So it's like, okay, right, I have a family I need to take care of, and I want to make sure they have a house and the food that they need. And but you're able to do that without the added tension of like, I need to get this done and I need to blah blah blah. So being able to differentiate that sort of, coming at it as a goal as opposed to a craving, it becomes easier when you understand that I is not as substantial as you thought it was. That, like, yes, momentarily, like in this life, I'm Diego. I don't know what's going to happen in the next life, but as I keep observing myself, there's just nothing really there. And a lot of my peace is actually built on that. And a lot of my action, like my action to do loving and selfless things in the world, it comes from being less attached to me.
Mm. Say that last part again, and this is so brilliant. Fuck.
Yeah, being selfless, being giving, being more loving in the world, and like giving those good actions. It's more possible because I'm less attached to me.
Absolutely brilliant. And I wanted to also remind people that Diego's arrived here with 10 years of daily practice, right? You're coming up to
Hmm.
10th or 11th year, similar.
Yeah, just past 10 years this
Yeah.
summer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're coming up to like you start in the summer, start in the fall, so we're kind of in that same process
Hmm.
of when the awakening started, and to just remind people that when you start to change, you know, in sometimes this topic of the absolute truth could be so jarring, so disoriented, and it can lead people to saying, "Oh, Buddhism is nihilistic," but it's not. It
No.
will crack you open to experience selflessness and generosity and warmth in an entire new way. You are going to be a sunbeam. You're going to be magnetic and charismatic, and not in a selfish way. Me, my dreams, my life. It's going to have always this altruistic backbone, the selfless backbone to offer and to give and as a way of life. And I just want to emphasize one thing too. It's like start where you're at, going to the what Diego said, perhaps, and this is my view, it's navigating the truth that you said, I suffer because I think I exist. It might not be where you need to arrive to get to. And in your book, this is, I forgot what chapter it is. It's on page 217. So we're looking at perhaps the last chapter of the book, one of the last
Hmm.
chapters of the
Hmm.
book. Yeah, yeah, it's in the last, yeah, chapter perhaps 10th. So Diego's speaking about this note, the absolute truth at chapter 10 for a reason. You got to do all the relative work first, honey. You got to get to all, literally do all these deeper, subtle to arrive at this super subtle truth. You can't read the book on chapter 10. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're like, yeah, you can. I hope I'm not. But I think it builds. I think it builds. I
Hmm.
think revelation builds. I think self actualization builds, and you do have to work on a relative level to arrive at this absolute realization first. You
I
know.
think, yeah, I really agree. I think you got to start off with the like what my teacher calls like the kindergarten of Vipassana. And like in our 10-day retreats, he like we do these like serious silent 10-day courses. And even though they're so serious, he's like, this is just the beginning. Like, you come here, you learn how to practice, and then over time, it's like, you climb these hills, you overcome so much ignorance, and then ultimately your practice gets to a space where it's like, wow, like more and more wisdom just opens itself up to you. And I love what you said too about, like the Buddhist teaching is not nihilistic at all. It's about love and freedom. It's really about love and freedom. And to be able to really love yourself well, to treat yourself well in your daily life, it requires a sense of selflessness so that you don't get run over by your own cravings. And like your cravings are not going to fulfill you. Like they're going to lead you to further tension and potentially heartache. But if you're able to give yourself what you need as opposed to what you crave, then that's going to help you tremendously, and you'll be more selfless to the people around you as well. So it's really the truth of no self is like one of the more powerful truths that can really just like give us full access to happiness and liberation.
Hmm. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Well done, my dear. Once again, well done. I mean,
Thank you, my friend.
this book is like legendary, powerful. I mean, even just looking at the cover itself, I'm like, long exhale. So thank you. Now, I think we're going to move on to some questions that
Sure.
people have
Yes, thank you
sent.
very much. We have a few questions. First question comes from a lady who says, reading lighter, I have often had aha moments that trigger emotional reactions and thoughts. What advice do you have for us doing the work but find ourselves in challenging places as we're moving through it?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that's it's common. I think what we need to become accustomed to is creating space so that we can allow ourselves to feel the hard things as they arise without feeding them. So it's really about letting yourself feel your emotions without becoming them. And that might sound like a paradox or counterintuitive, but there's a subtle space in the mind where we can just let ourselves feel without giving it power, without giving that thing that we're feeling, giving it control, and creating enough space to just let yourself feel what's happening and giving it the time it needs, I think is actually really powerful and really healing.
Next question. Both of you have big profiles on social media. I often find the busyness of social media is the antithesis to being present. How do you find balance?
Oh, that's a great question. I'd love to hear your thoughts too. So, the way I deal with it is I put a timer on the social media. I have it timed for about an hour and a half. So I'll post in the morning, put up some stories, and then I do my best to just like leave it alone. Or if I do spend time on it, I actually spend a lot of time. Like I created like a personal account just for myself and like 100 friends, and I will spend time, but there's no like just there aren't like that many things on it, so it keeps it really simple to check in with other people. But I try to use it super intentionally and as little as possible.
Mhm. I think for me, it's just like what's our priority, you know? I think it really comes down to that. I think prioritizing our freedom, prioritizing concentration, prioritizing our ability to be present, really kind of, it's more time to that, less time to this. And to be honest, where I'm at right now, I have somebody who does the posting for me, which I'm so grateful that I can like wake up, do my practice, take care of my dishes, take care of the house, and like not worry about the specific time to post anymore. It feels a little less personal sometimes, but it's where I'm at right now. I might change later,
Mhm.
but I do just want to also emphasize what you said too, like set up a timer. It's so important
Yeah.
to realize that multitasking and distraction is not the path to freedom, you know.
We also both meditate daily. That's what really connected us to each other, was like we were both like really serious daily meditators. And like social media, it's like it's a part of life, right? Like it's where humanity has a conversation with itself, so we can like decide when we want to be part of that conversation. But it's a part of life, so being able to develop a better relationship with it is critically important. And part of developing a better relationship with it for me has been like, no matter what, like having time to meditate in the morning, having time to meditate in the evening, and having those moments to develop a sense of presence and a sense of self-awareness just makes it easier to realize when you like start turning into like a scroll zombie and you're just scrolling way too much.
Yep, 100%. Nothing else to add besides that. Notice when you're becoming a scroll zombie, honey. Notice how long you like have not been in your body, feeling your sensations, being with your feelings and emotions, like how long you've like left the present moment. And through
Hmm.
practice, you would know this dissonance. You would know it so well. You would like literally it would be kind of like a backbone of your, you would know when you're not present, when you're not in your body, when you're not really engaging with your like body in a really somatic aware way. It will be very you would just know. You just like I know now when I'm like not in my body, not engaging from the present moment, like bringing it past or the future into the present. So practice will show you that when you are on Instagram scrolling, become the scrolling zombie. It's like, oh shit, I don't like this is not, this is not. You would know it. You would know when it's time to just like be like, okay, putting this down. You know.
All right, our final two questions. Would you comment on dealing with the past with dealing with inherited trauma?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it's funny. So I had this experience in my first few Vipassana meditation courses where um I felt a lot of this like deep connection to my indigeneity, right? To my indigenous roots. So I was born in Ecuador and um come primarily from an indigenous background, some European, but primarily indigenous. And like I had a distinct feeling of horror, like I like could almost feel the genocide that my ancestors went through when I was meditating, and I could just like feel the blood of it all, and how hard it was for them to survive. Um, and I think that there's definitely something to it, right? Like if we felt some horror that our family has carried for a while, that some of it, leaves its remnants with us. And I'm not a scientist, so I can't like really speak to like epigenetics and whatnot, but there's definitely something to it. And I think either way, with what you're healing, trying to heal from in the past, like Sa and I said, your healing will happen in the present moment. So you don't need to know the details of everything that happened, but you have to understand that like wisdom happens in the present moment, joy happens in the present moment, like equanimity happens in the present moment, peace happens in the present moment. So that's really where your focus should be.
And our final question, person says, my question is about apology and healing. Often something will happen, something will be said, or something will be done, and then somebody is criticized for having said it or done it, and then comes an apology that's worded something like, if I hurt you, I apologize. And my question is, um, why the if? How can we better use language and apology?
Um, it's really tricky, right? So there's a few things that come to mind is when you are letting or creating a situation or accepting a situation where your happiness becomes dependent on what another person can say or do for you, then it's going to be very difficult for you to be happy. So sometimes an apology is totally warranted and it could help, but your greatest happiness is going to come from you being able to activate that within yourself and you accepting responsibility for your own perception and your own reaction to whatever it is that occurred. Because a lot of times, like, having your um yeah, having your happiness just like come from what another person is going to say, and then actually wanting it to come in a very specific manner. Like, we can't control other people, we can't control their perceptions. Like, you already have your own perception and your own reaction to deal with, and realizing that and being able to like activate your own peace from within as opposed to being given peace to you is like really, really important. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because I see you write things about this all the time where like, you shouldn't be like, yeah, can you tell us?
I mean, you took it away, honey. This is it. I think it's, it's the I do find that it's like necessary to like have a forgiving, like I do think that forgiveness does come as an attribute of liberation. I
Mm-hmm.
think that we become more forgiving. We're not attaching behavior to who the person is at the bottom of their heart. We have this ability to like see it more spacious. Um, and I do think language is kind of complicated, but I just want to emphasize what you said, that it's like you can't have this, circumstantial happiness. Like, it's, I think that's the difference between happiness and joy. I think that's what people say. It's like happiness circumstantial, joy is kind of like from the inside out. It exists,
Mm,
it exists. So I think you nailed it, honey. I think this is it. I think it's like if you're doing the forgiveness because you're seeking something, because if they receive it or not, I think if you're expecting something in return, then you've already lost the plot. If you're
yeah.
offering it as from the generous heart, from the wise heart, from the forgiving heart, then there's no need to receive anything back. And the last thing I'm going to say real quick about this is, I always speak about forgiveness as like an outward practice, like you're giving someone a letter or sending someone a text message or calling. But that should be the second step on the process. You have to find self-resolution. You have to come to terms
Mm,
between you and you first, and then kind of feel the need. Is it necessary for a text, a call, or a letter? Oftentimes it might not even be needed, because you just have to do the work between you and your mind, and you and your heart.
well, I wanted to add one last thing too about this is that like language is similar to memory where like we're often interpreting how we feel and then we're putting it into language. So you can lose a lot of meaning in speaking what you feel. And we have to speak what we feel because that, that's primarily how we communicate. So if someone said an apology to you in a way that you didn't particularly like, you may have not liked the words, but they may have had, and I don't know if this is the case, but they may have had a very incredible intention, but it just didn't come out great, right? Like they may have had an intention that's full-heartedly apologetic, but then when they put it together in words, it didn't sound the best. So that's something to realize is that what matters is really the intention behind the words and the words itself. Like, so much can get lost in words. So that's like another factor to consider, but it's always complex when it comes to these individual issues. Yeah.
Well, thanks to both of you. Thanks for everyone for joining us. Special thanks for those of you who sent in questions. Again, Diego's book is Lighter. Let go of the past, connect with the present, and expand the future. It is available wherever books are sold, and books with signed book plates are available in the link below and in the link in the comments section. Thanks, and as we like to say around here, go on gently.